if you are born into an indigenous tradition, then your journey is slightly different. Most of us here, we have not been born into an indigenous tradition. We have born into a culture that has lost its connection. And so for us, there is the work of reclaiming that, reconnecting with that, and also dealing with the... I give you an example because I come from England, and the England I grew up in, with all of its little villages, and in each little village there is a church, and they were often built in the 15th, 16th century. And they were built, I studied sacred geometry, and they were built often according to principles of sacred geometry, and they discovered in the last few years they were often built at a place of intersection of ley lines, where the energy patterns in the earth come together. And one thinks, for example, I studied Chartres Cathedral, which is a very powerful spiritual monument, and that was originally sacred to the Black Madonna, which is the earth energy. And the Black Madonna is there in the crypt of the cathedral, I think. And it's also on a place where many ley lines come together. So I was also brought up in the West Country near to Glastonbury, which is also a very ancient sacred earth center, and not far away is Stonehenge. And so I grew up in which there was this Christian spirituality, but there were still visible connections to the old earth energy, to the old ways. And what I experienced coming here is that connection wasn't present. And it has, you can sense somewhere like here, where there has been a spiritual center for a number of years, there has been work done to reconnect. But it's very, very different to if that connection is already present. And in a way there is a different quality of consciousness and a different spiritual work that needs to be done. If something is going to be rooted, if something is really going to nourish, I think, the human being in its deepest sense. And I think we have to discover that for ourselves. There was an interesting example is, in the 15 years ago we started to do these Sufi conferences of bringing together all the different Sufi orders. And the first gathering we had was down at a Silama on the coast, beautiful place. And at the beginning nothing worked. We couldn't get the person on the phone, they wouldn't get back to us. Nothing worked. So I thought, So I sent Barbara, who runs our office, go down there and just sit there until it works. And she went down there and she sat there for 3 days. And at the end of 3 days, somebody from the office came, and who she discovered later actually was Native American heritage. And then the connection was made both to the earth and to the people there, and then they opened their doors to us. And then we could start having these conferences which had to do with really grounding a certain Sufi energy here, bringing all the different Sufi orders together and celebrating the oneness that is at the heart of Sufism, but also connecting it to the earth. Otherwise it wasn't earth. Nothing real can happen unless it's connected. And this seems to be, as I say, something that got lost in translation, a little thread. If you're brought up in an indigenous tradition, you have a different karma. And both difficult and easier. Both more difficult because of everything that's been done to the indigenous people, and also easier because, God willing, you haven't lost that connection. But it's something that I've noticed, it's like, that isn't really brought up in the spiritual dialogue in this country, at least not as I've experienced it. And that to me is a certain sadness about it. There is an esoteric teaching that again never came from the East, which that women are actually spiritually different to men. This is not really understood. They have a different as much as they have a different physical body, a different psychological body, they also have a different spiritual body. And they have, my teacher used to say, a woman is always pure, like the earth. She is always pure. And they have this particular spiritual substance that has to do with the mystery of creation. And it's in a woman's spiritual centers, in a woman's chakras from birth. And part of its sacred purpose is to enable her to bring a soul into incarnation, which is both natural but also actually quite spiritually complicated. A rabbit doesn't have to do this. It is just part of the instinctual world. But a woman has the capacity to give a soul an experience of this physical plane. So she has in her spiritual centers a certain substance that can bring the worlds together. So that spirit and matter can be united in her womb. It's a very beautiful process to see how this happens from conception onwards, in particular after the first 3 months. The soul arrives after the first 3 months of pregnancy. And this means that she has a deep instinctual natural understanding of the spiritual nature of creation that a man doesn't. And a woman has this spiritual connection to the earth and also to the sacred centers within the earth, because instinctually a woman and the earth are one. It is like it used to be understood that sexuality was a sacred mystery that belonged to the feminine. A man was always kind of on the outside, which is why traditionally in the temple, it was in the temple priestesses would initiate a man into sexuality. It's always the woman that initiated the man. And part of the tragedy of our Western civilization is because of what happened in the patriarchal era. Not only have men forgotten this aspect of the feminine, women have also forgotten it for themselves. They've forgotten the sacred nature of their own instinctual self. And the ancient feminine initiations that took place for thousands of years, they were never written down. They're imaged in the myth of Demeter and Persephone. They have also been forgotten, so they're not passed from mother to daughter. And women aren't initiated into their own sacred connection to the earth, to creativity, to life. And so a certain regenerative potential that belong to women, that they also kept for the earth, because again, there is no difference, has been forgotten. And so both women are impoverished and also the earth is impoverished. And my hope, I think it's also a need, is that in the next 100 years or 200 years, enough women will regain that understanding, will regain that instinctual wisdom, will regain its connection to the creative centers within creation, that a certain healing can take place, because the patriarchy has not only damaged women, it's also damaged this connection between humanity and the earth. So it is really women have this deep wisdom within them, and hopefully if enough women reconnect with that in the right way and understand its relationship to the earth, then a certain healing can take place, and from this healing the earth can once again be nourished by the spiritual substance that women carry within their spiritual body, as happened at the time of the priestess and also in the first few centuries, even after the patriarchy. There was still a deep, it still continued, and then something can be reborn. And I don't see how this can happen without the participation of women, because women give birth, men don't. And I think women are needed to help the earth to regenerate and help the earth to give birth to a new cycle of its existence. And if this doesn't happen, then a certain regression will take place. Again, sadly, because so much spirituality in the West has become personalized. It's about our own individual personal journey. That essential element has become lost. So many women explore their spirituality without understanding the importance of their instinctual spiritual connection to the earth and to the cycles of creation, and why that is so needed at this time. The Sufis, of course, celebrate beauty, and Rumi says, a woman is God shining through subtle veils. And Ibn Arabi, one of the great other Sufis, he say, a woman is the highest form of beauty. And there is a whole Sufi tradition of celebrating the divine in the beauty of a woman. And again, sadly, that's another thing that's got lost. And I mean, I could give another whole talk about that. It is like how many mothers teach their daughters how to deal with the projection of the goddess when a young guy falls in love with her. Those secret, or not so secret, feminine understanding that used to be passed down from mother to daughter. In the West, they're encapsulated in the whole tradition of courtly love. It was one of the earliest explorations of that. They have got lost, so women don't teach their daughters the feminine mysteries, probably because they don't know them themselves. So there's the relationship between the divine and the physical got cut. And so that's why, as Yeats said, things fall apart, the center cannot hold. And it's, I think, again, for each of us, it is to reclaim that connection of the divine and the physical. And traditionally, they say a woman is the highest form of physical beauty. And just to respect, not to see the woman as an end in herself, but as a reflection of a divine beauty, just like sexuality and spirituality, or sexuality and the sacred, got divorced in our culture. So sex is just sex, rather than, again, a celebration of the divine. There is actually the moment of orgasm, this moment of bliss, and it is most people's only experience of the soul. If you have mystical experiences, you get taken into this state, and actually it's not just a moment, it can last sometimes for hours, but it shows the deep connection between sexuality and spirituality. And of course there's the whole tradition of Tantra that has used that dynamic of sexuality. Of course it also got misused and misunderstood. But again, it's an example of, long ago, this connection used to be understood, and then it got separated. And I think it's because sexuality is also an earth energy. It has to do with Kundalini, which has to do with the earth energy. And it has to do with each of us in our own way reclaiming it and celebrating it. And maybe at some time in the future we will be given back those teachings. I am more and more aware in the last few years of how much we have lost as a culture, how much has been forgotten. I say it's like the library at Alexandria that was destroyed. So many libraries have been destroyed, and so many deep esoteric teachings have been lost. Like we no longer have the teaching of names. We no longer understand how to name things. We no longer understand the power of naming something, and how that connects you also to creation. It is said in the Quran, and God taught Adam the names, which is the naming of something has to do with its magical connection. And we used to know the names. We used to know the names of creation. And if you know the names, there can be a real communion, a real communication. It's like the birds used to talk to us, and some people can still listen to horses, for example, but most of that teaching has become lost, and most of the esoteric teachings about sexuality have become lost. We don't know them anymore. Maybe we will be given back, they will be given back to us in a new way, but what is important, I think, is for each of us to remake that connection as it comes to us, as life gives it to us. And it could be, to be in love with a beautiful woman, and to experience the divine, and to experience the sacred feminine, and to be taken into the mystery of the feminine. And a man is always invited into that mystery of the feminine. You can't take it, and you can't own it. And I say, women used to be taught how to take a man into that mystery of the sacred feminine. It's interesting, in the temples, it had to be a completely impersonal relationship. They often weren't even allowed to know the name of the man they initiated. And in fact, traditionally, young men would go there before they got married, so that they could get initiated into the mystery of the sacred feminine, so they could then be with their wife. But I'm saying there are whole teachings that belong to that have got lost. You can't just reinvent them, and maybe they will get given back to humanity, maybe they won't, but it's for each of us to reclaim that connection with the sacred within creation in our own way. I think this is very important. And for men to respect it, which the patriarchy didn't, and for women to honor it within themselves. And that's a whole other area. And there are many, many different ways it can be honored. But it has to do with the sacred nature of creation. And in Sufism, this is called the secret of the word kun, the whole mystery of the divine being incarnated into matter, which, I say, as a culture we have lost. Yeah, for me it is more the mystery of forgetfulness. Destruction, look, Kali is a great goddess, and she is also the goddess of destruction. Shiva is creator and destroyer. This is part of life. It's created and it's destroyed. Whole galaxies are created and destroyed. To me, on the human arena, it is the mystery of forgetfulness. How come we have forgotten? I remember once I had this experience actually in a Seattle airport of all places. And it was in a waiting room. I'd come from Vancouver and I was getting a flight down back to California. And I was in this waiting room, and everybody, this was even before cell phones were so used, but people were talking and reading newspapers, etc. And for a moment, sometimes you get these moments when the veils of perception lift. And I saw how everybody was full of God. Every person there, I could just see they were just full with the light of God. And it was the most obvious, most apparent thing. And I saw that the real mystery was not that they were full of God, because that was obvious. The real mystery, the thing that I couldn't understand, is they were completely unaware they were full of God. That they were doing all these things, talking on the cell phone, reading newspaper, just sitting there bored, completely unaware they were full of this divine mystery. And that is, to me, the great human saga. And we've begun to lose the tools that reconnect us, that help us to remember. And to me, this is the great human tragedy, that we've forgotten. And we've begun to lose those tools that reconnect. That's why I feel so strongly when I said about when certain teachings came from the East, and they got slowly corrupted, and a certain essential notes got lost, so they no longer work as they were meant to work. These ancient teachings, they were given to humanity by great masters long ago, like the Tao Te Ching, great teachings given. And they have a very, very specific purpose. They're very beautifully made. And their purpose is to reconnect the human being with their highest nature, like aligning it, like the chiropractor. Realign us, reconnect us. And if you change one of those ingredients because it doesn't suit you, because you can't make money out of it, or for all the reasons, then it no longer works, and it appears to work. And this is the most dangerous thing of all. It creates a spiritual illusion that appears to give people what they want, rather than staying true to its original purpose. And it's so much of those, maybe this is human nature, I don't know, that human nature just corrupts, and they just corrupt, and they corrupt. But so many of those very precious teachings that came from the East, they began to lose a certain note, a certain essential core substance. And then they no longer serve their true purpose, which is to remind human beings of their divine nature, because that is human beings' condition. We are in this world, we forget, we need to remember. It's not complicated. And we were given all these practices, all these beautiful teachings. God, they are beautiful. When you see them, you can go into deep meditation. There is a place in the inner world where they are preserved in their purity, where the original teachings are present. It's like certain books, very, very beautiful, ancient. They are guarded by angels. And you see them, and they are so beautiful. And it is like those medieval books of ours, with gilded illustrations, and they are so beautiful. And you see them, and you think, oh. And then you see what is kind of sold in today's marketplace, and you think, okay. But anyway, that's just something personal for me, because I'm a kind of traditional mystic, I was brought up in the old school. I think as mature human beings, there has to be an accounting of what we are doing. And there has to be an accounting spiritually. And I don't see how we can honor our own spirituality if we take it away from the earth, because we are not angels. There is an angelic plane. It's a very beautiful plane. And the angels live in a world of light. And you can go there and you can work with the angels. And it's a very, very beautiful dimension. Angels have bodies of light. And they only bow down before God. In Sufism it's called the world of divine command. And even on the angelic plane there are angels of power and angels of beauty. And in some ways it's much easier just to go there and to be with the angels and to be in that angelic world, because they just bow down before God, because they are just made of light. But as human beings we have both worlds within us. We have the world of matter, the world of the elements, and we have the angelic world. And we can't dismiss one, we can't dismiss the earth in favor of the light, just like we can't deny the light in favor of the earth. And to me, a spiritual maturity is being able to live in both worlds. And, when I was 23, I was taken into the world of light. And of course, part of me wanted just to remain there, because it is just light. You don't have problems. You don't have to earn a living. You don't have to pay tax. You don't have to put gas in the car. There you think, and you are wherever you are. It is beautiful, and you can be with the angels, you can be with the souls of other human beings there, and yet there is this whole mystery of incarnation, and if it's one thing that the Christian myth, the Christian story, the Christianity has taught us, it's about the whole mystery of incarnation. When the divine incarnates, something remarkable happens, and it happens because it is incarnated. And there is that's why I spoke earlier about women, and about how, to me, the great sadness of feminine consciousness today is they have forgotten the enormous mystery in which they can participate, which is bringing the light of a soul into the physical world. And for some reason, that has been veiled from women, that they don't even know. They don't even know the magnitude of the mystery in which they participate. And this is, as human beings, we are at this place where the two seas come together, where the material, the physical, and the world of light intersect. And it's interesting that in Christianity, this is also the mystery of love. The Christ's teachings were about the mystery of love that got covered over and forgotten in some places. But it is like in that meeting of the world of light and the world of matter, it is the incarnation of love. It's the poet William Blake who says, "And we are put on earth a little space to learn to bear the beams of love." And it's how we hold and live that mystery. And again, it's easy, well, when you reach a certain stage, just to dissolve in the love. But while we are a human being, we also have the limitations of matter, the limitations of ordinary human life. And I really hope there are enough people who are mature enough in their spiritual practice to hold the two together, to hold the worlds together, because it is from bringing the worlds together that something new can be born. Not just by going into the world of light or just staying in the world of matter. Staying in the world of matter, we have science, we have technology, we have Walmart, we have however you like to see it. And staying in the world of light, there are beautiful spiritual teachings. But they've been beautiful spiritual teachings for hundreds of years, and they're still not being fully lived. And that is the opportunity for each of us to bring the worlds together, to bring the light of our own soul into our daily life, into relationship with the earth. Because that is the work that needs to be done now. If there is a meaning of the now, it is what is the work that needs to be done now. Sufis are often described as children of the moment, because you respond to the need of the moment. Not some abstract now, but a lived now, a responsible now. And this is what is present in our consciousness. We don't even have to read between the lines anymore. Traditionally, Sufis read between the lines of life to see what is really going on. You don't even need to read between the lines of life to know that the sea level is rising, to know that the air is becoming more toxic, to know the species are depleting. And that is the story of now. And we are here, and we have the light of the divine within us. And how are we going to use that light of the divine in relationship to the need of the moment, in relationship to the earth? And then, as you are pointing out, from the mixture of all of those elements, something new can be born, if it is God's will. In some ways it is much easier because there is such an obvious need that we need to include the earth in our prayers. It is not remote. It is... I find it interesting, I'm sure if you belong to a spiritual community, you pray. If you pray for people who are suffering, you pray for people who are near death. We often pray for people who died, for the peace of the soul. And these prayers have great healing properties, and they are powerful. And if a community prays, it's very powerful. And it's just one step to say, well, then we should pray for the earth, because it needs our prayers. And why should we exclude the earth? We pray for a dying friend. Why shouldn't we pray for a dying mother? And then we complete the circle.